Welcome back to another episode of the Overnight Success Podcast. I am really excited for today's episode. We've got a special guest. His name is Steve Spiro. Steve Spiro is an inspirational keynote speaker and author who hosts a weekly live broadcast on multiple platforms and is known today as the Master Connector. Though he started out as a shy, introvert, and art school kid who never imagined himself in business, he went on to launch his own advertising company in New York City, earned a black belt in karate and jujitsu, and ultimately became a top sales performer. Now he's considered one of LinkedIn's top influencers with over 30,000 connections. He uses that journey to help audiences build genuine, meaningful human connections. And I can say that I'm on this journey with Steve, and I'm so excited to hop into his story today on the Overnight Success. Thank you, Steve, for joining me.
Well, I appreciate it, Cristy. Thanks for the kind words. And what's going on, everyone? Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, coming at you live and direct. Yeah, it's good to be here with you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yay. Well, Steve, this whole podcast is about kind of that overnight success, which we know is never really an overnight success. So can we hear more about your story?
Wow. How much time do we have, Cristy? I mean, it's crazy. Lots of years of experience under this belt. But yeah, I mean, you touched on a little bit. Born and raised in the Bronx, very entrepreneurial. Well, a little bit of an entrepreneurial background. My dad had a liquor store, but really, it really wasn't him as an entrepreneur. Really, he was a business, an employee that owned a business. Really, but I did see work ethic from my mom and my dad. One up going into I was dyslexic, learning disabled, picked on and bullied as a kid, but I found I gravitated towards art thanks to my grandma who kind of saw my talent. And I think the creativity was a big thing for me because being dyslexic, I learned how to be a creative problem solver. So long story short, when I'm, as you said in the intro, went to high school and college for advertising, got out, couldn't get a job, and like you said, started a advertising company in New York City, and it's pretty wild being a 22-year-old businessman. And then also went on to get my double black belts at a karate studio. So it's been a wild run, but had a very illustrious advertising career, and eventually went from advertising into the marketing space, digital marketing world started to shape up, and then eventually the economy shifted and I was out of work and I had to reinvent myself. And of all things, I decided to go into sales, and to make it worse, I got into copier sales on the evolutionary scale below the chimpanzee and the orangutan as the copier salesman. So just just crazy. Did well, like you said, eventually became a top performer, moved around a bit, and do some consulting today. But really, the crazy part is along the way, I was introduced to an incredibly successful entrepreneur who took on a mentoring role with me, became a mentor of mine, and he was wildly successful in many businesses and had really incredible impact on me. And he actually got challenged me, number one, to get into self development. I wish I'd known about self development earlier, but books and podcasts and conferences and networking. And he told me that he challenged me to meet three strangers every day, and that really was the game changer for me. And yeah, I mean, an introvert and a New Yorker talk to strangers like it's fear of death and dismemberment. It's ridiculous. It's insane. It's intimidating. But I did it and still do it to this day, and started growing a massive network. And as you said, it's just still have my hands in a few things, but ultimately the goal is, and wrote a book. I came out with a book, The Tao, the Master of Connector. I know you said you're in the midst of listening to the audio book, which I appreciate. My show is going great. As of the recording today, we're up to episode 247 with amazing guests on our show we've had, and just it's been a wild journey. But the ultimate goal is to be paid to travel the world, speak and inspire, and be a beacon of light. And along that way, recently got asked and been blessed to be on a TED stage. So just waiting for that to officially come out to be able to bless the world with what I had to share. But that's just another part of that journey. So yeah, there's a lot of other little nuances and steps and crazinesses along the way, but that's the short version of it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I want to dive into some of those things if you're open to it. First of all, as I have been going through your book, I'm about halfway through, and one of the questions that was popping up for me is, the fear of becoming a black belt. So I am a competitive gymnast, or I used to be, I should say, and I think that that has shaped me, and I think sports do shape people, and so if you're open to kind of talking a little bit more about what got you into um, karate and jujitsu. I know you touched on it in the book, as at least as much as I have heard. And then also, last time we chatted, you said your wife is also a black belt. And so
Yeah.
I'd love to hear kind of that story and how that aligns with how you show up in the world today.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things, early on, and I may have wrote this in the book, I can't remember at this stage, but when my family saw I was bullied as a kid and they had no money, so they took me to judo class, and it actually made it worse because when the kids in the neighborhood found out that I was training, they're like, "Okay, let's see what you got." So that didn't really help much, but it did have this effect on me, and I remember in my closet was my bag with my gi, my uniform, and I remember the smell even to this day of that, and there was something intriguing about it. And of course, growing up, even I'm gonna date myself, but kung fu with David Carradine and Saturday morning kung fu theater and all the martial arts that Chuck Norris back in the day and all these things, and those had effect on me. So I was at a party with some. It was an adult birthday party, but there was some kids that we had our own little table, and one of the guys was around my age, and he told me that he was training. I saw this spark in his eyes, and he got me completely re-engaged to like I should do this again. And, at 20, I got started, and it was a little later than most, but I'm glad I did. And yeah, tremendous amount of fears because I was the short guy, the guy who, I have very short limbs. I mean, like, yeah, I just didn't have the talent that a lot of, and they were bigger, they were stronger, they were more experienced. And, our class, we fought everybody. It wasn't just you fought your beginners, you fought black belts, everybody. And so, lots of eye stitches on my eyes and my nose getting broke and lips split open and all these crazy things, broken bones, all that. But, I learned to, fear the fear and do it anyway. And I think the motivation for getting through that for me was I remember visualizing the kids that bullied me as a younger person. And I said to myself, I just visualized them. And I never went back in life and beat their butt up or anything like that, but I was in my mind imagining that I was taking care of business that way, and so I used some creative visualization, before I even known that was something that is very popular in the self-development worlds, today, but yeah, I did that. So that answers that part of the question. Now, I don't know if you wanna stop there and see if I know you asked about, the other black belt and all that other stuff, I can get it, and my wife and all that, but I don't know if you had any questions on that.
I mean, that's really powerful. I love that you showed up, you persevered, which is what comes through a lot in your book as well, is that grit. You talk a lot about grit. You talk a lot about overcoming the hard challenges. And I think one thing that you mentioned in the book is even through that bloody face, you said, I showed up every single day. Even when you weren't feeling well, it was like, I'm not breaking this promise to myself. And I think that that shows through in so many areas. And so, yeah, if there's anything else you want to add on that, I mean, I have a few more questions outside of the black belt, so we can move forward if you want to.
No, I'm happy to go as far as you wanna go, as deep as you wanna go. Yeah, I mean, you said it, right? When I was sick, and this is before we knew health-wise, you shouldn't go be around people in that close environment when you are sick, but I showed up anyway, and I'm like, "All right, I'll just put my gi on." I would show up just because 'cause I'll watch, because I didn't wanna miss a class. There was something about me that didn't wanna miss anything. Maybe it's FOMO, I don't know. But I came anyway, and then I'm like, "All right, maybe I'll just put my uniform on, my gi on." I'm like, well, maybe I'll just do the warm up." And by the time I was done, I had finished the whole class and actually felt really better, much better than I went. But I was proving to myself that I'm outworking everybody, and there was something that gave me more confidence that I'm willing to do what most people aren't, and that I've used that, I've leaned on that mentality through a lot of my life. Yeah.
That's
But
powerful.
yeah.
I
So
love that.
I don't wanna get into the craziness of the story, but it was an issue that happened, a thing that happened with my I was already a black belt, and we were trained to kick and punch, and even though my sensei he had 2 black belts, he had a black belt in karate and also in jujitsu. Now, I know a lot of people, when you hear jujitsu, you think of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and there's nothing wrong with it, it's great art, but this was traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu. We're trained to not get to the if you get to the ground, stomp them in the head and get away, don't try to roll, because my sensei in jujitsu was a captain, former captain of New York City Police Department. He's like, "You don't wanna be on the ground in the middle of a bar fight while 6 of their buddies are kicking you in the head. You wanna do your damage and get out." Now in the cage, it makes sense, but that's mano a mano, but in the martial arts, it's not always that. But I was in this situation where I didn't want to, but I had to use it, and all I did was put the guy in a headlock and kept punching him, and but I'm pulling my punch because I don't wanna kill the guy, and I'm like, "I probably should be training in something that's gonna learn how to control the situation." So I could
Mm,
have, knowing what I know now in the jujitsu world, I could have put him in an arm lock, an arm bar, and I could have put him in a submission hold, standing up. It wouldn't have been sitting on the laying down, but I would have done something, and then I could have just said, "Listen, if you make another move, I'm gonna break your arm." And just instead of just putting him in a headlock and hitting him, it's like that's brutal. It's like, yeah. So that pushed me to I should go get my black belt in jiu-jitsu as well. I should finish the journey and follow the footsteps of my sensei. In terms of my wife, so she's an interesting lady. She's got a lot of grit too. But she followed 6 months after. Maybe it was FOMO also, I don't know, but she actually joined the karate studio 6 months after, and there were very few ladies that trained back then. It was a pretty brutal kind of training. I mean, guy and not that women can't handle it. I know they could, but it takes a certain type, male or female, to be able to deal with my sensei, who was yeah, it was like the cross between a football coach, a drill instructor, like like a maniac all in one. It's like he put the heat on in the middle of the summer and close the doors, and you weren't allowed to drink water, or if you wipe your sweat drop, give me 50 push-ups. Like, it was crazy. Oh, but that taught grit and determination. I learned, like, you know what? If you just hang in there, it's gonna be okay. Just hang in there. If you don't quit, you win. That's a big one. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, I love that. No, and that's the thing. I think sports do translate really well into real life because, you know, in the unforeseen, there's an issue where you're getting into a fight, but knowing that you know how to handle yourself in those situations, I think makes you stronger. I personally like to work out in the gym. I don't know how to fight, and maybe that's a detriment, but the weights show me that I can do hard things. You winning those wars, we'll call them almost, is
Mhm.
that you can do hard things and you can persevere through them, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
100%.
that's powerful.
Yeah.
So another thing that you talk a lot on, Steve, is mentorship. I've heard you talk about it when we're communicating. I heard you bring it up in this room today. I hear it in your book. I'd love to hear more about. Now we've talked about kind of that like scary, hard, in the ring. How has mentorship helped you show up and break through those barriers of your introvertedness? And I love, love, love. I remember probably 3 years ago when I first met you was meet 3 new people every single day. Like, that is so scary for so many people, and maybe
Still is.
that's, like, the tipping point of where this starts, but I'd love to hear more about your mentorship journey of how you've seen that play an impact in your life and also how you give back to others. So I know that's, like, big question, but what's coming up for you?
Yeah. There's tons there. What I loved about the martial arts was the ability to, once I did hit certain levels, was be able to get back and to be able to be a sensei. And sensei is a Japanese word, which the one who goes before. So sensei isn't always older, it's just somebody who has a little more wisdom or experience. And I love the ability to be able to train others. My wife and I at one point were teaching kids, and we loved that piece of being able to, have some kind of contribution. And what we saw, especially with kids, was we saw their confidence growing as we trained them. And so there was some value, there was a lot of value, a lot of joy in that. But it was superficial, if you will. And when I started to look into you know, other realms of business, that's when a good friend of my coworker introduced me to my mentor today, and this is many years back. And I saw his lifestyle, and I saw what he had, and I was, to be honest with you, I would, be growing up broke, and as a family that didn't have a lot, even though my dad had the business, we struggled, and they were divorced early on, and two households to support. It was hard. So I was initially attracted by the time and money, and I saw when I met him, he had this peace, this peace in his eyes, and I thought, I guess because he's loaded, but it was more. And I realized as I started to get around him, the kind of impact he had on other people, and it really made a difference for me. And so he's been responsible for a lot in my life. And as you said, I mentioned him in my book. I did a TEDx talk recently, like I said, and he's a big thread in that talk as well, because he really did. He really made an impact. Now, what I found is, and I talk to a lot of people, and there's no disrespect to the people that I speak to, that are coaches, and I think coaches and life coaches, mentors, coaches, yeah, and not so much mentors. You don't really hear that word that much. I do see mentors in the corporate world, and so let me touch on coaches first, and then I'll touch on mentors in the corporate world. So, and again, kudos to them, much respect. But what I saw was, and you're an athlete, so you could appreciate this. With the coaches that I saw, it reminded me a little of, I'll call it, uh, coaching from afar, or theoretical coaching. And what I mean by that is, imagine if you had a coach. Like, let's say you're a football player and you have a coach that never saw you on the on the playing field or in the weight room. How could that be your coach? They need to see you, they need to be in the game with you. And a lot of times my challenge with coaching, the traditional coaching, is that a lot of times it's try this, try that, let me know how you make out. Which, how could a football coach do that? You have to be in the game. And the good news, with the relationship I had with him, and still to this day, is I'm working on projects with him, and so the mentorship it's relatable, it's applicable mentorship. So that's one thing. And the mentorship has not just been about business; it's been about everything, life. I mean, we've talked about marriage stuff, we've talked about relationship stuff, we've talked about finance stuff in terms of personal. Well, hey, is it a good time to buy a house? It's a good time to sell the house. What do you think? Should I, sell my car right now? Should I purchase a lease? Like that. And he doesn't know it all. He tells me all the time, I don't know it all. But it gave me the ability to have somebody. And the challenge with the work mentors, and they're great, but you can't ask a question like, "Hey, I'm having some trouble with my marriage. What do you think?" You'd probably be in the HR department right away if you did that kind of question to somebody you work with. So it's good mentorship from a standpoint of work, but this was holistic mentorship. It was everything. And I love the fact that how he's changed my life. I've been blessed to be able to pay that forward. And I mentioned that a little bit in my TED talk as well.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like because you found this person that could help mentor you, it's allowed you to come to more of your truest, authentic self, which I would argue is the master connector. And so, how do you break barriers to create real connections in this complex digital world? As I think, you know, probably prior to meeting a mentor, it would have been challenging for you to even have your guiding light. Actually, before I ask that question, I have one more question.
Yeah.
Is you talk a lot about passion and the why. And I think for me personally, I just think that having a strong why is really important. It's hard to show up authentically if you don't know what your why is. And I know you touch on a little bit in your book, but just because we're here, I want to hear it from you today. Is before we go into kind of breaking down those barriers and making the connections and relying on your authenticity, let's talk about your why
Yeah.
first.
So before I tell you my why, I want to tell you why I think the importance of having a why is from my perspective. And what I say that is I hear so many young people, and I know this is a mix of crowds, the people that you have, your community, your audience, but there's such pressure on today hey, if you find what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, and find something you're passionate about, and then you create a career of that. Listen, there's some truth in that, but I think there's too much focus on the what and the how, and what there should be more focus on is in the why and the who. I say that a lot, and I really, really believe it. And what I say to people often is, I was like, do you like traveling? Which is one of my passions, by the way. And they're like, oh yeah, of course, yeah. Where would you like to go? Italy. Okay, great. You like cars? Yeah. What's your dream car? Oh, a Ferrari. I said, okay, interesting. They're both Italian, right? To Italy and Ferrari. That's great. Now, will the Ferrari take you to Italy? No. Okay, but you love the Ferrari because it's fun, it's fast, it's sleek, it's beautiful looking, right? So your focus is on the what, but will that what take you where you want to go, which is to Italy? And the answer is no, it's not designed to. And so too many people focus on the vehicle. Oh, yeah, I love kids. I'm gonna be a teacher. I love to help people. I'll be a nurse. Great. But will that get you the lifestyle you want? I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't,
Mm.
right? But you gotta figure out where you wanna go, and then you figure out the vehicle and the road to get you there. So just on a level set why the why is so important. And Simon Sinek touches on it a little bit. For me, initially, it was travel, and it still is. I love traveling, and a lot of it is helping my family. That's a big part of it. But the big thing now today is really the vision of that impact and making an impact on the world. And that's why the vision of being, paid to travel the world, speak and inspire and be a beacon of light. The focus being that beacon of light. It's so important to me. I realize when it's all said and done, at the end of the day is over. Okay. It's like, what kind of impact did you leave for the world, right? You can't take it with you, but what you leave behind. And I'm not necessarily talking about money and finances, but maybe, and what is one life worth that you made an impact to? And I believe it's so important. So that's really the ultimate why, which is really my vision versus my dream, if you will. They're a little different.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I feel like I felt that. Like, I can tell in the way that when we've engaged and how you show up is you are aligned with that. And I think that's where that authenticity comes in. And so thank you for first level setting. I loved that analogy. We talk a lot about cars here as well and how those are, I'm a fiend for speed. So I loved that. But let's hop into another question here. So, how do you break barriers to create real connections in this complex digital world? We are in 2026 and technology is not going anywhere. So, how do we break those barriers?
So what I speak about, and then I'll break this down some more, is, and back up a little bit. This sort of started to really, really take shape for me. It's been there all along through mentorship, to your point, but it started to take shape for me during COVID when I was on like 7 calls a day, literally, because there was nothing else to do during the lockdown. And I started to see when I had these conversations with people how half the time, people were getting emotional. I see their eyes watering. I saw them literally crying. I saw them telling me, Steve, I'm telling you things that I've told nobody before in my entire life. And I was like, there's something here. And I wasn't doing it manipulative or on purpose, but it was something. And I realized, number one, I learned how to tell my story in a way that shared some of my vulnerability and my authenticity. And that was huge. It's funny when I get on a call and I say, I'd love to hear your story. I'll tell you mine, and then we'll go from there. I think you probably heard me say that. And then, it's a 30-minute call, and 29 minutes later, they're still going. I'm like, oh, well, that was great. Maybe we'll one day get on another call and you hear my side, but thank you. I got to go. And then there's others that basically they tell their story in like a minute and a half. It's like their short version of their resume. Yeah. So I went to school for finance. I became a CPA, and here I am today. Okay, great. Like, can you give me a little more? Like, are you married, kids? Where do you live? Like, were you born? Like, how about a little more? So I've learned how to tell the story, and I think it's important to learn how to tell your story. but tell it with some things that maybe allow you to be a little vulnerable, and also things that are going to bring they're going to show you in a good light. Like, you don't need to just say, "Hey, I was sexually molested," just for the sake of it. No, but maybe you say, "I was, I was." You could say, "I was assaulted," or whatever you want to use. But here's what happened and what I learned from that. And then you could bring the positive side to it. You don't just have to be, like I say, I was bullied, but then, but you hear with the other side that I'm a master connector now today. So, and I'm a double black belt. So again, you want to be vulnerable, but at the same time, you could show the other side. So it's not just airing your dirty laundry. But I think that allows people to see you're real, and it allows them to also maybe open up a little bit. And again, like I said, people are opening up and telling me things they said they never told anyone before. So one is authenticity, being authentic, being vulnerable. Number two is being others focused. At the end of every call, and Christy, I know you said you appreciated me for this. I offer up some things. Maybe it's to be a part of my networking event as a one-time visitor. Maybe it's some introductions. Maybe it's get on my show, or whatever. I'm always offering things. I'm being others focused, looking to give, add value, always something. Minimum two, sometimes three, sometimes four or five, as many. I remember my friend Cameron. I, one of the things he appreciated about me, and why we have this strong relationship today, is I heard him loud and clear. He was talking about his challenges as a small business owner, and I said, "Have you ever read the book E-Myth Revisited?" And he said, "No." I said, "It talks about working on your business versus in your business." And still to this day, he gives me props for that recommendation. So whatever I could do to add value. So number two is being others focused. And I've had the best financial years of my life in the last 3, 4 years because I've given. And I don't give with the idea I'm going to get. I do just know that the law of reciprocity is always in effect. And if you don't believe it, tell me you don't believe in the law of gravity and go to the top of a 10-story building and say, "I don't believe in gravity. I'm going to jump." Well, splat. Okay. You're going to confirm. You can't, you only confirm the laws of nature, and you can't dispute them. You only confirm them. So, but the law of reciprocity works. You plant seeds. If you read I don't know if you're up to the part I talk about the secret of the corn. You plant corn seed, and you're going to get back corn, and you're going to get a lot more back than you plant. The law of increasing return kicks in. So I give, I give, and I've been blessed. So that's number two. Number three is grit. You mentioned that before. Talk a lot about that, especially in my book. I mean, just being able to get through grit, super important. And then the fourth is building community and growing connections. But I believe that the first two are really important to breaking barriers, especially the authenticity part. And what I've seen happen in the sales world, because in sales, the first barrier is, how do you get in front of a C-level executive? And so you got to use grit to do that, but you also being authentic, being real, being a little creative. And then the second barrier is getting past the arms folded, lip puckered out. What do you got? That barrier. So there's that. But then there's also the other side of the coin, the introverts like me, the engineer types that don't want to talk to people, but they know to better their career, they need to be able to break the barrier, be able to create human connection. They know that to grow in their career, they need that. So there's those kinds of things. But I think authenticity and being others focused are the key. Out of the four pillars, those are two to me the strongest. Then I could go on and on, but I don't want to keep talking.
No, that's wonderful. I love that perspective. As a master connector, I think putting people first, being a giver, having that connection is really powerful, and I can see that coming through. Anything that I've heard you speak on, any engagement we've had, I've seen that. And I love that you show up, and from what I can see, is you break down those walls and you say, if somebody else can do it, I can too. Being a double black belt is like, I think, case in point that you can do hard things. And so I want to ask you one of my favorite questions on this podcast, and we've kind of alluded to it and danced around it, but point blankly, how would you describe success?
Well, that's a good one. I think most people think success is things, but and accomplishments. But I think success, true success, and I didn't make this up, but I love it and I embrace it. is how many people are better because you were here and you were in their life. That's what true success is to me.
I love that. Yeah, thank you for saying that. I agree. I think that's a powerful statement and sentiment. Um, okay, so we're going to kind of start wrapping it up here, Steve. And I want to ask you some kind of spitfire questions of resources and value add for the audience. So, what well, actually, before I do that, is one thing I'll say. I love that you reference a lot of books in your book. You reference where you're learning this knowledge and this wisdom from. I know I noted down a couple that I was like, oh, I haven't heard that, but I should probably listen or read that too. So thank you. But for entrepreneurs, for business owners who are scaling, for people who are just looking to improve their life, we can go kind of any avenue you want to here. Do you have a recommended book or resource that you would suggest?
Yeah, it's funny, and I didn't make this up either, and I can't quote the source, but, people look at going to networking rooms and all sorts of rooms. I wanna be in the right room, but the best room is the room for self-improvement, you know? And so you wanna get into that. Um, I mean, for me, 'cause I had the personality of watching paint dry and I didn't have people skills. My best friends growing up were characters from TV, Captain Kirk, Felix Unger, and Oscar Madison. If you know old school sitcoms and all that, those are the names except for Star Trek. But yeah, so I don't know. So I needed How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and it's a classic, but it's still to this day is great. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, Master Key to Riches, the sequel of that. Those are great. But some of the more recent ones, I'm in the process right now of reading the book Limitless by Jim Quick. And I don't know, Christy, if you recommended that to me. Somebody recently did. I wish I could give them credit, but I don't remember. But a great book right now that on really mindset. Speaking of which, mindset's great as well. And that was Carol Dweck, I believe, and she talks about fixed mindset versus growth mindset, and that's been a great book for me. I could go on and on. There's so many books, but I guess my go-to for years. It's funny because my mentor said to me, and I think I say this in the book. He's like, have you ever read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People? I said, yeah, Ed, you've recommended it for the last 3 years in a row. You may want to pick it up again because that's where my people skills were. They were bad, and I'm still working on it.
Well, your people skills are great, Master Connector. If we
Appreciate
may.
that.
Um, Thank you for those book recs. And all the books you've mentioned are great. I highly recommend them. I would also ask you are you currently tuning into any visuals? So what I mean by that is there a top influencer that you like on either YouTube? I know you're huge on LinkedIn. Is there anybody that you might recommend other than yourself? Because you can give a plug here in just a few minutes.
I appreciate it. I be honest with you, I'm part of a private group of entrepreneurs where there's audios and videos shared and they're not for public consumption. So I'm using the downtime for those things, which they're highly curated. I mean, there's some amazing influences out there, but I don't know what the fruit on the tree is what I'm looking for. And I'm very protective. I like to protect the ear gates and the eye gates and so forth. And so nothing wrong with anyone out there, but that's really where a lot of my other besides listening to audiobooks, that's the other stuff that I listen to. So I couldn't really give you the names. Yeah.
Totally respect that. And one thing that I like to say too is as you're consuming those things, it's shaping where you're going. And in different seasons, you have different things that
Yeah.
you're taking in. And so that's totally respectable. And I appreciate the honest answer. And so last question before we wrap it up is there anything that I did not ask you that you feel that I should have that you'd like to share with our audience today?
I don't know if you would have known to ask this, but in my TEDx journey, I was accepted to TEDx Third Ward, which I'm honored that I was accepted, and I had applications out. So other TEDx organizations wanted me to come speak, and I'm like, "Hey, I got this. This talk is already going to be done. Are you open to another talk?" And some of them were, and so I created this next keynote besides the Breaking Barriers one that you referenced before. The next keynote is the death of the old school sales rep, going from transactional to transformational. We live in a B2B, business to business, B2C, business to consumer world. But what about B to H, business to human? And so that's the next keynote for me and I think that's an area that, especially with 20 plus years of sales, hardcore sales experience, having the ability to be able to look at that is important as well. And the human side of things.
Yeah, I think that's super important as we've talked on the digital front, we've talked on your online and your presence there. I know one of the sessions I tuned into on your LinkedIn Live, you talked about B to H, and I think more now than ever is humans buy from humans. Humans know, like, and trust humans. Humans want that connection, right? And so, Steve, you've been absolutely amazing. Where can people find you, and what resources do you have that you'd like to share with our audience today?
I appreciate that very much, Christy. And it's been a pleasure being on with you. Really a pleasure. You're amazing at what you do. Um,
Thank you.
they can go to stevespiro.com for sure. And that's just a general website with a lot of my, content, if you will. But the best if they're interested in having me as a speaker, master-connector.com. If they're interested in learning about my show, it's masterconnector.how. Yeah, those 3 and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my jam, so go find me. I'm pretty sure if you type in Steve Spiro Master Connect, it comes up right at the very top, so usually 99% of the time.
Yes, go connect with Steve online. And this book has been phenomenal. Tell us a little bit more about your book and what it's called.
I appreciate it. It's the Tao of a master connector. See the black belt there? There it is. But Tao meaning the way or path, right? The Tao is not. It can be religion, but I don't mean it in that way. It's way. And the truth is, in the Japanese style of the martial arts, Do, karate Do, judo, bushido. That means the way. And so I really wanted the book to be named The Do of a Master Connector, but they would have been like, "The do of a master connector? What does that mean?" But people know Tao. So it's the way of the master connector, and it's the way, the subtext is the way an introvert became a master connector. And it's parables and stories. It's based off of the 4 pillars we just spoke about: grit, being others focused, have authenticity, and building community, and growing connections. And I think it's a great book. It's my love letter to God and to the world. So that's I hope you pick it up, whether it be the audio book or the written book.
Yeah. It's wonderful so far. I'm halfway through, and I appreciate you putting your story out there. And if nothing else, people from this podcast that you're listening to today, go connect with Steve and 2 other people, and go get out of your comfort zone and go build the life that you want. And thank you so much, Steve. It's been an absolute honor. Appreciate you being
Thank
here.
you so much. You've been great, Christy. I appreciate you.